10 questions that I was actually sent from a gentleman who's new to real estate development. He's looking at building a townhouse and like an infill project, right? So 4 up, 4 down, 5 up, 5 down, something similar to what I built in Shaganappi. And what was really nice was Mark is his first name. He actually sent me an email with all the questions laid out. Now, this is the second time we had a conversation. So what I did is I actually took some of the questions we had in the first call, and then I kind of put it together with the questions that he asked in the email. So that's the background. I'm going to give you these answers as a developer and also someone that now is a partner in a construction company. Okay, so this isn't meant to be gospel, right? This is just my perspective. This is how I look at it. This is what I would tell my dad if he was building. Okay. So the first question is, of the consultants you indicated that will be required, mechanical, electrical, energy code, survey, geotech, structural, are you able to provide recommendations? And the answer that I gave him was like, absolutely. And the reason that I really kind of am adamant about this is that the flip side is if we don't give you recommendations or we don't help you build the team, as a developer, I can tell you that I've had projects where just one consultant in particular, a structural engineer, probably cost me an extra $50,000 at least, just due to like way over designing it, making it extremely complicated to execute and build, being very inflexible. And so you really just want to work with consultants, an architect, a GC that all get along, that all know each other, that all know how to kind of play nice, if you will. And it can be, it just minimizes it, right? Like being a developer, you're going to run into a ton of problems and challenges. The last thing you need is a consultant that's going to add to that. And that's what frustrates me. And that's why, there's just certain consultants that I just will like never work with again. Okay. So that's the first one. Number 2, how do you communicate with me? What's the frequency, on-site meetings? So generally speaking, what we have found kind of the sweet spot, if you will, for infills is kind of every 2 weeks on-site meetings. Doesn't mean you need to be there, but if you want that, that's an option. We also use software Procore to like update, daily or every couple of days pictures, like in terms of what's going on, so you can see that. Like there's an app for your phone. Not to say that Procore is the only one, but it's the one that we use, and as a developer and a builder now, I really like it. You'll also get bi-weekly reports so you can see what happened and a 2-week look ahead. So that communication is really important. And so whoever you're working with, I thought that was a really good question. And I would say that you just really want to make sure that you're getting those emails. And the thing there is you don't want surprises as a developer, right? You don't want to find out when it's too late that something that happened 3 months ago is now coming up today, right? And so those bi-weekly emails can really kind of keep you informed beyond obviously phone calls and all the rest of it. Who will be on my project? How many staff? So generally speaking, on infill locations, you're either going to get a site super or a foreman with experience having built many of these infill townhouse projects. You're also going to get a dedicated project manager and a project coordinator. Okay, so those would be like the 3 main people. Sometimes you get a laborer to help with the back framing and whatnot. But at the end of the day, the PC, project coordinator, and the project manager are not going to be full-time on your project, right? Because you wouldn't want that. What you do want is, I don't know what happened there. What you do want is a full-time foreman that is going to be on your site. So I hear some clicking. I don't know what that is. Anyways. Okay, number 4, how is the interior design handled? Is that something that the architect does, or do you have a designer that helps? So I always hire a designer. For me, my wife is a designer, so she always helps. I pay her, her and her business partner. So I would say that yes, you should factor in a designer to help with the lighting, the flooring, the fixtures, paints, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's well worth it. And it can make a big difference, right? For the $7,000 or $10,000 that it costs to hire a designer. I don't know, whatever the budget is, it's a fraction of the cost, but that's what everybody kind of, not everybody, but the people that are coming through your townhouse when to rent or for sale, that's what they're seeing, right? So I would say don't be cheap, and that's not usually what architects do. So number 5, how long does it take to build? I would say generally speaking, when we're doing like inner city infills, we're 10 to 12 months. And what I said, and I kind of told a story. So the project that I have on Bow Trail, which is a 5 up, 5 down, we were complete, and the neighbor to me, he had already excavated and was just getting ready to. I don't know if they had foundations or in or not, but it was pretty close. Anyways, long story short, they're only now, I think, complete framing 9 months later, and my guess is that they're probably another 5 or 6 months away from being complete. The reason I tell you this is I did the math just to figure out what does it cost between general conditions, right? Like the staff that you have on your project, as well as lost revenue. I don't even think I factored in my interest reserve, like the money that I'm paying to the bank. And it was about $35,000 a month, right? So if you're 4 months over, you're $140,000 just in lost time, right? If you do 6 months, I mean, you can do the math. It's very expensive to have delays on your project. So I would just kind of keep that in mind. Question 6, this is a good one. What level of contingency do you as a developer typically use in anticipation of change orders? So this was kind of my comment. I said, look, if this is your first project, I'd carry a minimum of 5%, but preferably 10% on both your hard and soft costs. Your soft costs, I would use less of a percent, and I would carry more of like a hard number. And the reason for that is, let's say your soft costs are 300,000, just as a number, right? If you're carrying 5%, that's 15 grand. That's nothing. Even 10% is 30,000. I mean, we had to move a power pole that cost me $35,000. So one item, and you're not going to know what that cost is until NMAX, in our case, came back. They did his design review. They said, here are your options. The options, we had to go through a series of steps, because one option was going to be 15 and the other one was 35. Unfortunately, the 15 didn't work for us. So I mean, like, I think what happens is, and this is why it's challenging for general contractors, I think, to work with new developers, and that is they don't know what they don't know, and so they kind of cross their fingers a lot and hope that everything's going to work out because their budget is tight, right? They're not carrying a contingency. Even me just saying 200,000, like as a 10% on 2 million, that might be too small, right? Like the reality is you just want to go into a project with plenty of room for unknowns, right? And I'll give you a couple of examples, right? Even just on the project that I built, right? So we had like building code changes. We had offsite levies that we got hit with. In this case, I think it was like $39,000 in offsite levies. We had to move a power pole, like I said, that was $35,000. The variance took longer to get through the city for parking. So interest rates went from whatever it was, 3% up to 6.5%. So now my carrying cost goes up. Like there's just a lot of things that can happen. It's not a GC's fault. It's not your consultant's fault. It's just why development and why so few people, I think, stick with it. So if I can just give you the proper expectations to go in, kind of eyes wide open, and say, look, there's a lot of things that can happen, and just have cash on hand, right? If you go into it and a 5% contingency is the only way this thing works, my advice is just don't do it, right? Like let someone else take that risk. Number 7, can you advise if you've had any or many warranty claims on similar completed projects, and if so, what type of claims? So I would say that typically what happens is you're going to have like water issues, right? Dishwasher wasn't connected right, the washer like backs up or something to that effect. We've had situations where the tenant unplugs the sump right in the basement, and then it backs up, and then you got to go in and fix it. So oftentimes, I mean, your first year is going to be under warranty from your builder. And after that, there's different variations of what is covered under the builder's warranty. But I would say that for the most part, those are the things that we see for them, like at least on our projects. Okay. Number 8, can you confirm you'd have the capacity to take our project on in 8 to 10 months? At what point would you get started so I can give so I can get more certainty on costs and the schedule? So what I said is like, look, generally what we do at Calamar is we start in pre-construction, and the important part of pre-construction is it gives us about 4 months to start working with you. And it also gives us the ability to say, okay, like this deal is real, right? Like I probably have, I don't know, 5 or 6 calls a week from people that say they want to develop or do projects. And this is why I'm recording this video, because my hope is that I'm able to save time and just send this out when, maybe you're watching this in the future, if you will. And these are the questions that we get asked most often, right? So when we have developer that is committed, right? So in pre-con, this is like during the development permit stage, right? And you involve the general contractor. We know you've got consultants. You've got an architect. Now you have a GC. We're all working together. We're tightening up those plans. We're value engineering. We're showing value. We're figuring out if we work well together. Like that gives us 4 months, the general contractor, to basically say, okay, you know what? This is the foreman that's going to be on the project. This is the PC. This is the project manager. And the reason that's important is like construction is a very tight margin business, and the last thing you want is your staff just sitting around. Like we don't do that, right? We generally have more inflow of people that want to work with us, and sometimes someone will say, well, we got to get started next week, and unfortunately I would say most often that just doesn't work for us, because we like to be planning in advance. Like we're looking out into 2024 right now, and we're slotting in people and developers already. So it's really nice when this gentleman says, look, we're 8 to 10 months out. That's perfect, right? Okay. Question 9, are you bondable, or is that something lenders typically require? And if so, what does that cost? So we are bondable, Calamar that is. And what I would say is that I don't think we've ever had a situation where the client required it. Oftentimes it's banks that are like a little more nervous and they want that extra insurance. And generally when they see our portfolio and they see that we are in fact bondable, they usually, don't require it. So it is an extra cost. It's usually a percentage of the total building. And what we would do is we would just go out and we would go to our insurance company and basically say, this is the size of the project, what's going to cost, and then that cost just gets passed on to you, the developer. So, it's something that we can generally go into more detail, but I would say for the most part that, our clients don't require it. Question 10, are you able to provide references of a few clients that you've done similar projects to mine? And I said, yes, absolutely. Like we've got, right now we're at 100% in the sense that we get reference letters from everybody that we work with. I said, if we work with you and we exceed your expectations, we would expect the same. So I thought those were great questions. And there was actually one other question that he asked, which is, so there's 2 other questions. So can you send me a link to the video article you referred to? So the video is basically the process that we work with. It's on our website, calamar.ca, and I think it's under about, and you'll see our process. The other part is that I wrote an article on how much does it cost to build a townhouse. Some of those numbers are a little bit dated, but they'll still give you a very good idea of hard, soft, and land, and that way you'll get an idea of what it costs to build one of these projects. And the last question, and that's usually the first question, which is, how much money am I going to make on this project? That's really what people are asking, right? If I take on the risk, how much am I going to make? And what I thought I would do is, it's a loaded question. It's very big. I tend to spend a lot of time there. What I'm going to do next week is I'm actually going to show you a project in terms of okay, so this is, let's assume your land is this. Let's assume your soft costs are this. Let's assume your hard costs are this. I'm going to show you kind of based on those assumptions, what kind of revenue you could expect or anticipate. And then based on that, with or without debt, here's your returns. Okay, so it's very simple. And what's interesting is when I deal with sophisticated developers, they know it off the back of their, all they're trying to do is they're just trying to tighten up their budget, right? So they're assuming it's going to cost, let's just say $425 per up and down townhouse. Well, now we're working on getting that down to $415, $414, $412, $418, whatever the number is. We're just tightening up, right? But for a new developer, they're starting and they're parameters are out to here, right? They're thinking it's 350 to 500. They're just trying to get more direction. So I can give people to about here, and then once you get to pre-con, it gets tighter and tighter until you start construction. And just like I said, that's where your contingency comes in. But I'm going to go through how much you could potentially make, cash on cash returns, IRRs, and we'll discuss kind of the pros and cons to that. So if you have other questions that you would like to ask that I didn't cover, put them below. This is going to be on YouTube. Obviously, if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can just shoot me an email, and I'll do my best, maybe in a future podcast or video, to answer those. So hopefully that was helpful. Just kind of to reiterate, the 10 questions were basically around consultants. That's number one. Like, do you recommend them? And yes, we always help build that team. How often do you communicate, right? Bi-weekly, both on site meetings and in emails. How long will my project take? How many staff? We talked about your foreman or site super, a project manager, and a project coordinator. We talked about how or should you involve an interior designer? The answer is yes. How long does it take to build? 10 to 12 months. That's infill, right? So when I say infill, that's like knocking down a house and going up from there. If you go into greenfield, your civil is going to take a little bit longer, right? The roads and infrastructure and whatnot, but generally the timeframes to build those townhouses go down by a couple of months. What level of contingency? I would just say go back and listen to my explanation on that. Like 5% is what seasoned developers generally carry, 5 to 7%. But if you're new, I'd say probably 10% plus. Can you advise about warranty claims? We talked about that. Generally water damage, but it's usually not that much. It's more of a frustration. Can you confirm if you'd have the capacity, 8 to 10 months? I talked about the importance of pre-construction to really get your GC involved up front. Are you bondable? Is that even something lenders typically require? Yes, we're bondable. No, we don't usually require it, or lenders don't require it. And can you provide references? And obviously the answer is yes. So that's it. Have a great week. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.